Hi everyone, welcome to this video. Here we're going to be looking at how to trigger a Lambda function from an SQS queue. In this video, we're going to be first creating a new Lambda function. Next, we'll be assigning permissions for that Lambda functions so that it can access the SQS queue. Post that, we'll be adding a Lambda trigger in the existing SQS queue that we have set up in the last video. And finally, we're going to be parsing the values that are sent from the SQS queue in our Lambda function, and we'll be able to view all of the logs in CloudWatch as well. So let's begin. Now first let me go to the AWS console in order to create a Lambda functions, and here I'm going to click on create a function, and I'm going to leave it as author from scratch. For the name, I can give any name. I'm just going to give YouTube tutorial. Runtime, I'm going to use Python for this tutorial, and for everything else I'm going to leave it in the default settings. Now let me click on create function. So this will create our Lambda function for us. Okay, so our Lambda function has been successfully made, and as you can see, this is the code for our Lambda function. So I'll be going over how this works. First, now let's add a trigger to our SQS queue. So let's go to the SQS part. I'm going to search for SQS and open up the SQS in a new tab. And as you can see, we already have one SQS queue that we set up in the last video. And let's go down and click on the tab called Lambda triggers. So as you can see here, as of now, we don't have any Lambda triggers. Let's configure a Lambda trigger. It's going to ask us to choose a particular function or which Lambda function that we want to invoke. So for that, we already have our YouTube tutorial Lambda function that we created. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to click save. And if you see that it's giving me an error that the function execution role does not have permissions to call receive message on SQS. This is because our Lambda function that we have created as of now does not have enough permissions to access the SQS queue. So to rectify this, I'm going to open up IAM, or instead of opening up, we can either open up IAM and modify directly, or what we can do is we can go to our Lambda function, go to configurations, and under permissions you can see that we have a role that has been made for us. So let me click on this, and this will directly take us to that particular role that's been assigned to this Lambda function. Here in the permission policies, as of now, we only have the AWS Lambda basic execution role. So with this, we won't be able to access the SQS queue. So let's click on add permission and click on attach policies. Here I'm going to type in SQS, and for now let me just give the Amazon SQS full access. Here I'm going to select this and click on add permission. In best practice, it's not advisable to do this. We should only give permission for whatever access is required. Like if we only going to read stuff, then we should only give read only access. But for now, I'm just going to give full access for the sake of this tutorial. Now after we have created this role, let's go back to that page where we tried to add the Lambda trigger, and I'm going to click on save again. Now you can see that it's been successfully added since we have added the permissions. Okay, the Lambda trigger has been successfully enabled, as you can see here, for this SQS queue. So what this essentially does is that whenever any messages come to this queue, this Lambda function that we have added, our YouTube tutorial Lambda function, will get invoked. So this is our Lambda function here. Let's go to the code, and I'm going to be adding the code that I've already made, and I'll be explaining this in detail now. Just a second. So here in the code editor, I'm going to be adding this code, and what I'm essentially doing is that I am looping through all of the event records key, like this array of this event variable has all of the records available. So I'm going to go over there, and the payload will be in a key called body. So then what I'm doing is I'm doing a JSON load of that particular payload. So I'm getting a decoded JSON value here, and I'm accessing the values that we sent from the form. So in the form, we have sent it under these keys. So under category string value and the message string value. under both of these we have sent it, and all I'm going to do is print the category and the message that we're going to send. So let me just deploy these changes. Okay, great, this is now deployed. And now that this is deployed, what we can do is I'm going to again go back to the form, send this messages from the form. Hi, how are you? I'm just going to type in this message, choose, let's say, business, and submit the form. Okay, great. So now what would have happened is this would get pushed to SQS. From SQS, our Lambda function will get invoked. And in order to check this, let's go to monitor, and we can click on view CloudWatch logs. CloudWatch will be having all of the logs for our particular Lambda function. Let's go down and you can see here, let's go to the latest log stream and click on it. And right, and you can see in this log, the third log, we can see that the message has been printed. So category is business and the message is whatever we have added in the form. So we have now successfully pushed the data from our local, where we have an AWS SDK, and that goes to an SQS queue. From an SQS, our Lambda function gets called. And to just have a view at the code on how we're accessing it, so let me go back to the Lambda function. And as you can see here, we're accessing it with the keys again, the under the category string value and the message string value. So to view this, let me go to the VS code, and you can see here that in the previous video we had made a file called push to sqs.php. Here I'm performing an array, so I'm saying category of string value will be the value that we add in the form, and message of string value is the one that we have in the form, and this message body is basically sent to our SQS queue. So this is how we're accessing it from we're pushing the data from SDK into SQS, and from SQS into Lambda is getting called, and all of these logs are added into CloudWatch as well. So thank you for looking into this video. I'll be posting this Lambda function code in the description as well. I hope to see you all in the next video. Thank you so much. Bye bye.